Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Bod. I'm an artist, an educator, and an author, and I'm based on the south coast of the UK in the beautiful Dorset. And beautiful it is at the moment, too. It's the 1st of April, but no falls here. The sun is shining, and I'm looking forward to sharing all sorts of information with you. Now, you might be watching this live via my YouTube channel. You might be watching it on catch up via the blog. Whichever way you are watching, you are astonishingly welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, we do have a bit of a chat window up. We have a live chat, which is what's going on in the on the YouTube page right now. So do feel free to pop up and say hello. It's always lovely to have you here. I do try and give you a shout out if I possibly can. And if you think that there is someone who might benefit from this tutorial or who you think might be interested, then do feel free to share. Now, I need to give just a few people a shout out because I can see the chat is going crackers this morning. How wonderful. Good morning, Sue. Good morning, Rabina. Who else is in the room? Ali is in the room. Rosie, bonjour. Barbara is in the room. So is Trudy, Teresa, Hilary. Dee is in the room too, and Maureen. Good morning to all of you. Lovely to have you with me. Now, this morning, I've sort of got out of sync with the things that I talk about on Technique Tuesday and the kind of themes of the month that I have set. But I've been working very hard on my diary recently to try to get things all lined back up again. And also to bring you some exciting news this morning, just in case you have missed it. Now, the exciting news is the fact that Technique Tuesday is expanding. It's always been a great thrill of mine to bring you Technique Tuesday. It started just before we were locked down here in the UK, and it was a really wonderful opportunity for me to chat to you, to sort of bring us all together. But I never kind of made it formal, and I plan on making it extremely formal. So on the first Tuesday of every month, we will have this broadcast. We'll have Technique Tuesday, free to access to everybody, where we'll talk about something that is materials related or a particular technique, or like today, if you are struggling to work out what adhesives or mediums you can use with collage, then this might be helpful to you. And the tips and tricks that I do on the third Tuesday of the month, or thereabouts, will also continue, but it will be called Technique Tuesday Tips and Tricks because it sort of all goes under the same banner. That is where I record a demonstration for you with hopefully some relaxing music going on in the background. And I try to pop up in the live chat too, so that if there are any questions, I can answer them about what's going on in screen, or we just we catch up, don't we? And it's rather lovely and delicious. So the other thing to bring you is the news that now Technique Tuesday will have some tutorials available to you. So let me take you over to the website so you can see exactly where you need to find those things. So over on the website, yours might look a little bit different to this because it kind of depends on what device you're looking at it on, but it will look very similar to this. You might just have a different menu hidden somewhere. And in that menu, can you see it's changed a little bit? So it used to say YouTube, it used to say follow Ali live. It now says Technique Tuesday because Technique Tuesday is a huge part of what I do. So when you find Technique Tuesday, you'll find some bits and pieces of information. There is the blog that is with today's broadcast that has gone live already. And if you click on that, you can read a little bit more about the inspiration for why I use collage. And then you'll be able to see that broadcast there. There's also some links to a couple of the things that I will be using in this video. And you will see there new tutorials coming in May. But let's take you where you can find more information about those. If you go back up to Technique Tuesday, can you see there? Very easy. Technique Tuesday to tutorials. I do love a bit of alliteration. And if you click on those, you'll be able to find the information. Now, these are just one-offs. and you can join me live. They'll be broadcast on YouTube, so you don't need to log into Zoom. You don't need any fancy equipment. You will be sent an email with the link of where to go, and you don't have to join me live. You can watch it on catch up if you would prefer. And as long as you keep that link, as long as you keep that email, you will always have access to what it was that we chatted about, the painting that I demonstrate, all of those little bits of information that hopefully you will find really useful to improve your painting skills, to kind of add to any techniques that you've already got. Now, our theme for May is flower and fruit studies. So we're going to be doing some wisteria in May. Do love a bit of wisteria. And then in June, my theme of the month is New York. And so we will be looking at Manhattan Bridge in watercolor and ink. That picture, and both of those pictures really look far more complicated than they actually are. But that is my job, to be able to help you to break those down and to give you the confidence of being able to follow a similar subject in the future. So if you think that that's of interest to you, I would love it if you could join me for those. And if you think someone else might benefit from those, then please do feel free to share that information. It's always really, really helpful to me to be able to reach as wide an audience as I possibly can. And if you would like me to, if you'd like to have a conversation with me, or if you would like to share that information with somebody else, and you maybe think that they might need a bit of a chat, they're lacking confidence, or they don't really know where to start, then I can put their mind at ease. You're very welcome to email me, ali@learningtopaint.co.uk. So, what have I got planned for you this morning? Now, last month, my theme of the month was collage. This theme of the month is animals in character, but we're just in a big washing machine of techniques at the moment. Now, this query came out of a poll that I put over on my Learning to Paint Facebook page, where I said, what do you want to learn about in Technique Tuesday? And there was quite an overwhelming discussion about, actually, I really like doing collage, but I don't know what mediums I'm supposed to be using. I don't know what glues are the best. I don't really know how to make those applications. Well, fear not, because collage is one of my favourite things to do. And if you go over to the blog, you'll be able to read exactly why, and hopefully it'll make you chuckle. I had a real memory hit of something from when I was a kid. So go over and read that blog, because you'll find out exactly why I love collage. Now, the first thing I want to be able to clear up is the difference between what is an adhesive and what is a medium, because that word medium is kind of bandied around, isn't it? And I'm not really sure what that means, if I'm honest. I think it's just a sort of umbrella term, an overarching term to describe things that you can mix with paint, that you can add to paint, that you can add to your project. But when you go and do your shopping, there's so many of them, aren't there? Now, I'm going to discuss both. I'm going to discuss adhesives that you use with your collage material, and maybe some mediums that you can use with your collage material to both stick it and possibly to apply over the top. If you are watching this live and you have any specific questions at all, don't forget to pop them into the chat, and at several intervals I will just have a look to see what questions are popped up. But we have this amazing hive of knowledge, so if you see a question pop up and you think you know the answer it for me. That'd be marvellous. Makes my job very easy. Shall we go to that overhead camera so that we can see what it is that I've got in store for you, and hopefully answer some questions for you. So here are some of the things that I have got prepared for you. I've got a few collage materials because I wasn't too sure what it is that we might need this morning. Whilst I try to prep these demonstrations, I never know what questions are going to pop up, and suddenly something will occur to me in the discussion, and it's quite useful for me to have everything at my fingertips. Now, first, it would be good, just in case you've never encountered it, to understand what collage is. Now, this is a demonstration that I did for my All Aboard Artist members last week, where we were talking about really simple kind of shapes, adding different collage materials down to a piece of paper, and what you could do with it. And on here, we've got a huge variety of things. It's stuck down onto watercolor paper. There are some bits of torn up magazine in here. There's some tissue paper here as well. And then there's also some collage papers, which I actually made myself. And this was a kind of a huge, great kind of culmination of a month's worth of experimenting with what collage is and what collage does. But this is also a really good demonstration of the types of adhesives and the types of mediums that you might want to consider when conducting your own collage experiments. So let's clear these things to one side just temporarily, and we'll talk about glue. Now, the most obvious, or I think the most obvious glue for collage is this, a good old-fashioned glue stick. Pritt stick, probably the most well-known. This is just like a general alternative to it. Now, pros and cons for this. Very accessible, very easy to use. Doesn't smell, kind of still quite sticky and tacky, very portable as well if you're attending an art class or something like that. Fabulously easy to tear up your bits of paper or whatever it is, glue on the back, stick them down. That's really good. However, there are a couple of drawbacks with this. The sort of the major one being, if you like to add collage material and then you like to manipulate it in some way, either by adding paint or by adding other things over the top, then there is the potential that this isn't your best choice, because the chances are that this is not waterproof. That if you stuck your collage material down and then you wanted to go back in and, I don't know, add some shading or add a background, then the water from whatever it is you're using, whether that be watercolor, acrylic, ink, whatever it is, might inhabit this glue and then break it down, and then your collage starts peeling, and then it gets fantastically frustrating, doesn't it? So portable, yes. Easy to use, definitely. Possibly not the best if you want to build up your collage in layers. If it's just a case of sticking things down, I don't think you can go far wrong with this. Now, another glue that I use all the time is this one, which is called a fast tack glue. And I don't actually tend to use this for collage because it's not the most, it's not the cheapest. It is extremely fast drying though, hence the name. And so if you want something stuck down and you don't really want to faff about with waiting it to dry, I tend to use this for craft more than I do for collage. I just want to, I have no patience at all. If you've ever attended any of my workshops, you'll know I have zero patience with my own work. If I want to attach two bits of paper together, or if we're doing a craft-based project, then I tend to use this stuff because it really dries very, very speedily indeed. In terms of can you wash things over the top of it? The jury is out on that, to be perfectly honest. I've never really got to the bottom of whether it is waterproof or not. I have a feeling it's sort of somewhere in between those things, but I can't rely on it enough. However, if you do a lot of craft work, if you do anything like paper crafts or quilling or anything like that, it is a brilliant, brilliant glue. So if we're not using those two, then possibly the next best thing is this PVA glue. Polyvinyl acetate is what PVA stands for. And you get two different kinds of PVA glue. You get PVA glue that is washable, sometimes described as children's glue, because obviously the idea is that you can wash it out of clothes, mop it up if it's spilt, all of that kind of stuff. And then you get this kind, which is waterproof. I don't, again, for the same reasons that I was discussing with the glue stick, I don't particularly like the one that is washable. And again, if you've ever attended any of my collage tutorials or sessions, you will know that I very clearly state on equipment lists a waterproof PVA glue. That way, you can overlay, you can put colour over the top, all of those types of things, and it's going to stay put. Now, there is a drawback with this, but we'll talk more about that in just a second when we talk about some application techniques. So PVA glue is probably your best entry glue for sticking things down. However, This is my favourite. This is the one that I use more often than not. There is a second version of this, which I'll introduce you to in a second. This is called Bindex. This is made by Pebeo. This is actually known as an acrylic binder or an acrylic medium. There's that word again. The idea being that you can mix this with other things and it would be comparable to an acrylic paint. So it's water-based when it's wet and waterproof when it's dry. And so this becomes really useful as a product. Not only can I use this as an adhesive, I can use it to thicken up my acrylic paints. I can use it with my brusho powders to make an acrylic version of those. I can mix watercolor in with it. I can mix ink with it. It's really multifunctional. And as you can see, I have a very large pot of it because I use it an awful lot. Now, 2 reasons why I enjoy using Bindex. One is because it dries waterproof. The second, because it is a different consistency to PVA glue. It is actually a little bit more liquid. Let's just pop some of that in there. And it's sometimes quite hard to explain, isn't it, why you prefer one particular product over another. I personally prefer this product because it is the absolute perfect consistency. With PVA glue, sometimes you do have to thin this down. It's too thick and sticky and doesn't spread thinly on your collage materials. And so you need to pop some water in with this. Then it's a bit of a pain if you're not used to getting consistencies and water ratios correct. And then if you push it too far, so if you mix too much water with it, it then doesn't bind, it isn't a glue, it doesn't work in that way. And that can be super frustrating. But Bindex, and let's show you it in the close-up camera, is for me the perfect consistency. I haven't got to thin it out. It goes on to my collage papers really beautifully. Like most of the glues and mediums that I'm using today, this is white at the moment, but it dries clear. And so I can use a brush, which is my favourite tool for applying Bindex onto a surface. Goes down, all fabulous. Let's just show you very, very quickly what I mean by that. Let's get a piece of watercolour paper in so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And I will reach for a little scrap from a magazine that if I tear that up, and this is the technique that I use. I tend not to put the glue onto the collage material. What I tend to do is pop the glue down onto the surface. There you can see it's gone on very thinly. It's got a little bit of a shine to it at the moment. Then I push my collage material into it. And then I create a glue sandwich. So I go back over the top and I add another layer of adhesive. And so I've got glue, collage, glue. Now, depending on your surface, depending on what it is, how heavy the thing is that you're using, you might find that your surface is quite thirsty. And by that, I mean sometimes what can happen is that you're a bit hesitant with the glue. You put that down and the paper takes hold of it, sucks it into the surface. And actually, when you come to then put your collage material on top, the glue has sunk in and it's not going to stick properly. So sometimes what you have to do is you have to put a layer of glue on, then let it go off, let it dry a little bit, maybe put a second layer on. You can see with the brush, it creates a lovely thin layer. Take your piece of collage material, whatever that may be, stick it on there, and then pop the glue over the top. And what happens with that, if by putting the glue over the top, the glue starts to penetrate that collage material, and then can you see it dries perfectly flat. If you only put glue underneath, in my experience, I tend to find that that's when your collage material buckles. But look how smooth that is, lovely and flat. But here's the drawback of PVA glue, Bindex and similar products. It's that you get what's known as a glue halo. Can you see that shine all the way around it? Now, why would that bother anybody at all? It might bother you if you are planning on painting back over this surface with watercolor, because PVA glue, Bindex, and similar products actually repel your watercolor. So what you need to do then is to do something which seems very bizarre, but bear with me. When I've got my glue on and I've allowed it a bit of time to kind of sink in, I will go back over with a clean, damp brush and I will agitate the edges of where I put my glue down. And I go back in with a kitchen roll and I very firmly dab away at that surface. I'm trying to get rid of that nasty glue halo that's going to repel my colour. So what I should have done, can you see down here? It's really difficult in the camera, isn't it? Can you see down here? That has got a very definite glue halo. Look at that all the way around. If I put watercolour back over the top, then it would repel my watercolour. But look up here where I have got rid of that glue halo. Look at that. I'd be able to pop watercolour over and around this and it wouldn't repel it quite so much. So that for me is what makes Bindex a really super product. Now, we've just had a very quick question from Sue. Oh, and good morning, Joe. Good morning, Tina. Do you need old brushes for using Bindex or do they wash okay? That's a good question. I would always say use old brushes. You can probably see these are my 2 glue brushes. This one, not very well at all, as you can see, covered in white acrylic, and I haven't washed it out very well, so we've got glue all the way down to the ferrule. This is my better brush, which I'm a little more careful when I wash it out. I like flat brushes myself just because they kind of lay the colour down really nicely, but I wouldn't recommend that you use anything posh. And I don't particularly, just for the style of collage that I do, I don't recommend using something like a bristle brush or a decorating brush because that tends to put too much texture into the glue. A nylon brush like this one will leave a nice smooth finish, and then you haven't got to grapple with that either. Unless, of course, that is what you're looking for. Now, I promised you, didn't I? I said that there were 2 versions of Bindex. This is the traditional one. Now, I don't think it's new, but it's definitely new to me. Pebeo have brought out, they've got several versions of Bindex now. This is the one that has been interesting me recently in my constant search for products that are more ecologically friendly. So this is recyclable. So not only is the bottle, the pot that it's in, recycled, but actually the binder is recycled as well. Don't ask me for specifics. I haven't got to the bottom of that yet. I can't actually see much of a difference between the two. This one comes in a much more user-friendly pot as far as I'm concerned. The only thing that I have noticed is that just occasionally, and I'm talking about just occasionally, I tend to see little flecks, tiny microscopic little flecks of something else in there, which I'm assuming is part of the nature of it being recycled. It's not that things have fallen into my pot of glue, just here and there you sort of see the odd fleck of something and you think, oh right, I can see. It's also not as white. I mean, it looks pretty white in the camera, doesn't it? But it's not as sparkling white as the main type of Bindex. So do your homework. Pebeo has lots of information on their site to be able to help you with these decisions that you need to make. I do like that pot. Also, that lid, much easier to remove. So that kind of covers the glues, I think, apart from maybe one. And that's this. Here we go. Is that funny word again? This is acrylic matte medium. So there's hundreds of these on the market. It's a bewildering array of things that you can use to alter the consistency of your acrylic paint, to use as a glue, all of that kind of stuff. Now, this is one that I have used in the past when I have been unable to get hold of Bindex. Now, if you are a crafter or a sewer, then, or a textile artist, you may know of a product called Mod Podge. And Mod Podge comes in gloss and matte and shiny and glittery and all sorts of variations. Mod Podge is a sort of craft equivalent of Bindex, acrylic matte medium, all of those kind of things. It does a very, very similar job. So if you already have that, you're good to go. You can use that for your collage material. Now, matte medium, this is interesting because, as it says on the pot, this dries to a matte finish. Sometimes the disadvantage of Bindex, PVA glue and the like is that it dries with a very glossy surface, which you might not want. So it might be better to have a matte medium. Now, Mod Podge, I believe, comes in matte. I haven't done enough research on some of the new versions of Bindex to see if they've got a matte one in that. Also, because I already own this. Now, this is matte medium. Obviously, the idea of this is that you mix it with your acrylic paint and you can turn a glossy acrylic into a matte finish, which means that you're not going to get the shine on it, and perhaps that is a better aesthetic for you. Perhaps that sort of works better with the watercolor or whatever it is that you are planning on using on top. The disadvantage of this is the consistency of it. Now, if you are an SAA member, you may have noticed that in the past a bit of a boo-boo reel was put out because I had a pot of this and I squeezed it out into a palette and it went absolutely everywhere. It just exploded in my hand. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way today so that I don't do that in my own broadcast. And I'm actually just going to stick the brush in it. Now you will see when it comes out, let's get it into the close-up camera for you, that it is quite thick by comparison, which means that it's not so easy to spread. Except, of course, you may want to use a palette knife with it. Perhaps you have a particular way of putting down your collage material that would be better done with a palette knife, in which case the matte medium might work better for you. But I tend to find that you need to add a little bit of water to this. Then it can sometimes go a bit lumpy and it can be frustrating. All of these things you have to kind of ask yourself, don't you? Is it more important that it's matte, in which case I'll sort of put up with the application issues, or do I really want it to be a nice smooth consistency, in which case I might go for the Bindex, all of that kind of stuff. But it is another option available to you. And of course, if you are an acrylic painter, then maybe you own this already and maybe you don't need to rush out and buy a whole load of new adhesives. So I thought I would throw that into the mix. Can't get the lid on as well as getting the lid off, just for the sake of kind of argument and talking about all these types of things that are available to you. Now, you may notice a couple of other things that are lurking over here in my arsenal of stuff. Now, if you were with me in, when did we do that? I think it was February, where we did a Technique Tuesday that compared different types of gesso. And do go back and watch that. You can find that both on the Technique Tuesday blog and on the YouTube channel, if that interests you. Now, there was a gesso, which I didn't like, and that was this one, which was the Liquitex gesso. This is... it was just too runny for me, and I didn't sort of like the way it went down. It wasn't doing the job that I wanted it to do. And then when I was doing my homework for this broadcast, I thought, oh, hang on a minute, I wonder if I can use it as an adhesive, and then I haven't really wasted my money. And I can see how it goes down. Now, I haven't tried this. You are seeing this for the first time. So I'm going to compare it to the Bindex. Again, I'm just going to stick my brush in the pot because it's quicker. Let's stick it down here. So we'll put some of the gesso down. We will wallop the bit of collage material into it. That is the technical term. And then we'll pop the gesso over the top. Now, this gesso... it says that it's matte, which is interesting, because gesso is usually somewhere in between those two. It says that it's fluid, which is the reason that I didn't particularly like it. The bit that I'm struggling, you see, it says it's opaque, but I can very, very clearly see that collage material through it. What I'm going to do is accelerate the drying of it to see if it works as an adhesive. Where's my heat gun? Here it is. I'll dry the others while I'm here as well. Okay, that is not properly dry, but it's as good as it's going to get for a live broadcast. And let's get them back into close-up as well so that you can see them. So you can see there, that was the Bindex. Look at that, very glossy, very shiny, got a nasty glue halo all the way around. So I know that that's probably going to repel watercolor if I try to put watercolor over the top of it. There is the Bindex with the glue halo removed. Still got a bit of a shine to it. I didn't properly dry that bit of on its own. And down here, so look at that. Isn't that interesting? So there's that gesso that, okay, it's got a bit of a halo and maybe I should have taken care of that. But look how flat and matte that is in comparison to the Bindex. So that I find quite interesting. It's not that this is bad and this is good or vice versa. It's that you've got different things then available at your fingertips, both for sticking down your collage materials and also for affecting the way that you see them afterwards. So all of this stuff, I'm hoping, is useful to you. Now, as well as a gesso for a medium, you may have some watercolor ground. Now, various sorts. I've got my Daniel Smith one here. This is the pearlescent white. Now, if you have this, in order to create textures, you will have seen me demonstrate this before because this is a real favourite product of mine. The question that I now have to ask myself is, can I also use this as an adhesive? And the answer is, I don't really know. This is the pearlescent white. This is just the one I grabbed. So it's going to look very different to this because it is going to give me a bit of cover. But let's just wet the brush. We'll have a good old dip in. We'll apply some and then we'll see how it works in comparison, as long as I can get the lid off. There we go. So if I'm going to possibly need to thin this out a little bit for no other reason than this pot is a little bit on the elderly side and maybe it needs some encouragement, shall we call it that? And what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to put a coat of it down. Now, of course, you could mix other things with this. You could mix a little bit of Bindex in with this. You could mix a little bit of gesso in with this. But of course, the major question is, will it glue stuff down as well as being able to be used for priming, for affecting the texture? And I think the answer is most definitely yes. So isn't that interesting? So just because something doesn't say that it's an adhesive, don't rule it out. It might be actually the perfect thing for your collage project where you want to add a colour or a layer or some other thing on top of it. So effectively, like I always say, the best thing for you to do is to make up a chart, write down whatever it is that you have been using and then stick it down, let it dry naturally and see what happens. Now, an observation has just come in from Joe. Joe says, I quite often use the watercolor ground as an adhesive as I can paint over it nicely. That's brilliant. First-hand experience from the lovely Hive Mind. Thank you, Joe. That's really valuable, isn't it? And of course, because you can get watercolor ground in white, you can get it in transparent, all sorts of colors. And of course, you can tint it as well. Don't forget, a little bit of acrylic ink or a little bit of watercolor will tint your watercolor ground. Then it starts to open up those collage projects to you, doesn't it? And you'll be able to find lots more creative routes through. And if you think back to that demonstration that I did in February, I was talking about clear gesso as well, wasn't I? So when you have a project like this, or when you start thinking to yourself, oh, do you know what, I fancy having a go at collage, but I'm not really sure what it is that I need to do. Try not to go straight to what we call the back of the book project. Try not to go for the most complicated project. Try to just test your materials out and ask yourself, actually, this is meant to do this, but will it do this as well? Because then those products that you spend your hard-earned money on can be much more multifunctional to you. And also, because they are multifunctional, they will start to create really interesting textures, results, things on your surface, won't they? So try to experiment with them as much as you can. Now, Trudy's just made an observation. I like that idea, as it would be good on black paper too, then paint over loosely. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so not only could you use a transparent adhesive medium, whatever it is, so that your black paper still shows through, there is, of course, black watercolor ground. And many, many moons ago, I did some snowdrops, didn't I, using black watercolor ground as the texture. So lots of variations available to you, aren't there? So do have an experiment. Now, the one thing I wanted to talk to you about just before we part company today, when you're talking about thin materials like this, tissue papers, newsprint, magazine pages, all of those things, I think they are relatively easy to stick down. But very, very often you might want to use something that is an old painting, or you might want to stick two different sorts of watercolor paper together, and then it becomes a bit tricky, because what it is that you're trying to stick down is very heavy and it does have a mind of its own. So I thought we would just part company today with me demonstrating the technique that I use for sticking watercolor paper down onto watercolor paper, because there is a bit of a knack around it. Now, for this, I'm going to use my tried and tested versions of things, because that's the way that I know that it's going to be most successful. I'm going to just, as you can see, an old painting. I do love the reuse of a painting. So I'm going to take this little square of old painting, and I'm going to show you how I stick that down to make sure that it's stuck, that it's flat, and that it stays there as it is drying. So I'm going to go for the good old Bindex, because that is the product that I know, that is the product that I trust. You will always have products that you go, yeah, actually, I know that one works. So that's the one I will stick to. So I've got my bit of watercolor paper. Now, you can do this with a palette knife. That sometimes works really well. I'm going to actually use a brush today, for the plain and simple reason that it's slightly more difficult with a brush. And so I'm just trying to share with you the most awkward version of things, rather than the easiest version of things. And I'm going to use my old one, because this is a bit of a trusty steed, this brush. So I'm wetting the brush, but I don't want it to be flooded with water, because I don't want to dilute the Bindex. All I'm trying to do is make it so that the bristles move. I'm going to take my Bindex. I'm going to be quite generous with the application, but knowing that I'm sticking watercolor paper down, I am well aware that this surface and this surface are both quite thirsty. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put some glue down, then I'm going to give it a bit of a dry so that it kind of seals the surface. And then when I go to put glue on again, it's not going to be absorbed quite as much. So we'll go back again. We'll give it another coat on there. Also buys me a little bit of time. And then we will be super generous with the Bindex on the back of our collage material. So effectively, a bit like if you've ever used a contact adhesive, where you have to put glue on both parts, wait for them to dry, and then press them together. This is a very similar technique. Now, the minute that I make my little bit of watercolor paper wet with glue, it starts to curl almost immediately. And so when I stick it into that glue, I've got the edges poking up. You can see there. Let's stick it in the I've got gluey fingers. You can stick it in. I'll stick it into the close-up camera. Look at that. Straight away, it starts to curl. And that can be super frustrating because we haven't all got the time to be sat around holding down bits of paper with our fingers, have we? So what I will do, and I will try to do this carefully so as not to disturb whatever paint is on the surface, I will do the glue sandwich thing. So I will give it a coat over the top. But what tends to happen, actually it hasn't happened too much with this, is that because the paper is rising up to meet it, sometimes it will still start to pull away. I've obviously got my glue just right in this case, but I thought you might be interested to know what I use if the corners, edges, or the like do start to peel up, and I use these map pins. So what I do is I take my map pin and I use it to very lightly pin down those edges or corners so that hopefully as the glue dries, it keeps it anchored down. A tiny little hole in your collage material is not going to be of any consequence at all. And then that holds it down. You haven't got to get glue all over your fingers. You don't get in an icky old mess. And we'll see what happens as we dry it. So let's put it on to a low heat. We'll keep the heat gun moving so that it doesn't melt or make the glue bubble in one particular area. I'll dry it from the back as well, so that that glue that I put down on the paper is really core dry. If you were allowing this to dry naturally, I doubt you would have so much of an issue with it, but because I have no patience, as discussed earlier, then very often I accelerate the drying of it. Determined to knock everything over on my desk today. And then if I remove those pins very gently, A, you don't really see the hole in it at all, and B, look how beautifully stuck down that is. And I didn't get any on my fingers. I'm not kind of all stuck with glue. I'm not attached to everything else that is on the surface. And if you look at that paper was quite hefty. It was quite thick, but I've managed to get 2 pieces of watercolor paper stuck to each other very successfully. So just to recap, we talked about all different kinds of adhesives today. We talked about stick glue, we talked about fast tack glue, we talked about PVA, we did a comparison of PVA to Bindex, we looked at the possibility of using gesso, we looked at the possibility of using watercolor ground, and then I shared with you just a little technique to successfully stick down something very heavy to something else by using a very specific glue sandwich technique and a few little map pins. You can also incidentally use dressmaker's pins too. So I'm hoping that that helps. It starts to look like a sort of campaign map by the time you've got lots of map pins in it. So I'm hoping that all of those things helped you and inspired you as well for your next collage project. Collage is so much fun. It really is. I cannot recommend highly enough how marvellous you feel at the end of a session of ripping up, particularly if it's an old painting that you didn't like and you reappropriate it into something else. And then you can end up with something very simple but incredibly effective. And the thing that you will most definitely learn from a collage project are things like your tonal values, which we've discussed in a previous Technique Tuesday, and understanding how shape and form and things work. And so don't discount it. As much as I jest about it being something that is quite mindful and allows you a bit of escapism, surprising how much you can can learn from a collage project. Now, what are lots of people saying? Rosie is asking if I used Bindex to stick the butterflies onto my top. Sadly not. And people saying that the information today has been helpful, which I'm really pleased about. I'm glad. Don't forget that that's what these Technique Tuesdays are for. They are here to answer your questions. And so if you would like to affect some change in that, if there's a burning question that you have, then there's a poll over on my Facebook group, which you can find a link to in my blog, and you can go and you can add a question. I keep returning to that so that I find new inspiration, but I have set things for the next few months. Don't disappear on me yet. I'm just going to take you back over to the website because I want to share some dates for your diary. So there's those Technique Tuesday tutorials, but I've been a busy girl and I have actually sorted out my diary for the remainder of the year. It's only April. And I've given you lots of information for what you can expect coming up. So this month, our theme with the All Aboard artists and in my workshops is Animals with Character. There's some lovely video on demand there that you can enjoy. Like I said, May is the flower and fruit studies theme, and we've got the start of our new Technique Tuesday tutorials for which you are welcome to join me either live or via catch up. And then coming up, we have New York in June. And then I've also set the Technique Tuesdays as well. Let's go back up to the top. So Technique Tuesday in May is on the 6th of May, when we're going to be discussing vignette backgrounds, something people massively struggle with. But I'm hoping that as part of our fruit and flower studies for that month, I'll be able to help you with getting those very soft, elusive backgrounds. And then Technique Tuesday in June, because I know it doesn't seem like it links, but I promise you it does, with our New York theme, that's going to be using metal leaf. Now you can download those calendars and there's lots of variations in there. You can see, look at this. We've got charcoal and graphite, trees on safari, and what I've called Kingdom of Rust in October. So plenty for you to enjoy, plenty for you to get into your diaries. And Rabina is very kindly saying that she loves the new calendar layout on the website. Thank you very much. Took a number of hours to get that right and until I was happy with it. You can go and you can stick those dates in your diary, and they are downloadable too, so that you can share them with your friends. And I really appreciate every single share. You don't necessarily have to pay for a tutorial, although it's lovely when you join me, but sharing it across all of your creative communities is a huge help to me. You might think that it's nothing, but I promise you that every like, comment and share makes a massive difference to what I do and keeps things like this free to access. That's how important it is. So don't forget, you can join me on the 6th of May. That is our next Technique Tuesday, where we will be talking about those vignette backgrounds. I'm going to look forward to that. That's something that crops up in my work all the time, and I will be excited to share the techniques that I use with you. I hope today was useful. If you're enjoying the sunshine at the moment, then long may that continue. You know where to find me if you need me, ali@learningtopaint.co.uk. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon. Bye, everybody.